Hi, my name is Taylor, and everything I thought I knew about family was just a lie. It was another typical evening in suburban Chicago, the kind that felt both comforting and suffocating all at once. Taylor stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of spaghetti sauce that had simmered for hours, filling the house with a familiar warmth. Her daughter, Emma, was at the dining table, coloring, the quiet hum of a well-worn family routine. Taylor's life had become a series of predictable movements: work, home, the endless cycle of trying to make ends meet after the divorce. But tonight, something felt different. Something was off, just beyond the edge of her consciousness. She had no idea that this would be the night her world would begin to unravel. "Mom, can I have a snack?" Emma's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her back to the present. Taylor glanced at her daughter, giving her a soft smile as she reached for the fruit bowl on the counter. "Sure, sweetie, grab an apple," Taylor replied, her voice steady, but her mind already miles away. She thought about how life had been anything but easy since her divorce from Greg. The emotional weight of it still lingered, but more than that, she could feel something deeper was brewing, something she couldn't yet see, but that would change everything. The doorbell rang, a sharp sound in the otherwise peaceful evening. Taylor hesitated for a moment, wiping her hands on the towel before she walked toward the door. She wasn't expecting anyone, not at this hour. When she opened the door, she was face to face with her mother, Julia, a figure from Taylor's past, but also a presence that carried an undeniable tension. Julia had always been the type to exude a quiet authority, a woman who expected things to go her way. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Taylor asked, trying to mask the surprise in her voice. "I needed to talk to you," Julia said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her presence was commanding, yet it felt like there was something unspoken, an air of urgency that Taylor couldn't quite place. Taylor led her into the living room, both of them settling on the couch. The tension between them was palpable, though it had been years since they'd truly had a conversation like this. "You know, your father isn't getting any younger," Julia began, her voice cool but controlled. "And we need to start thinking about the future." Taylor frowned, unsure where this was going. "What do you mean by that?" Julia paused, her gaze steady. "There's something I need you to understand, Taylor. I've been managing the family's finances for a long time now. And with your father's condition worsening, it's time to make some decisions." "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Dad's fine." Taylor's tone became sharper, her instincts telling her this wasn't about her father's health at all. Julia took a breath, as if weighing her next words carefully. "I've decided to sell the house. The property, it's worth a lot. I'm planning to invest in something more secure. For the family, of course." Taylor's heart skipped a beat. The house. The one thing that had always been constant. The place she'd spent her childhood. The place her father had worked so hard to keep. It was suddenly slipping through her fingers. "Wait, what? You're selling the house?" Taylor's voice rose, her pulse quickening. "Without talking to me first?" Julia's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a tight smile. "It's for the best, Taylor. You can't possibly think you're in a position to manage things like this, can you?" The words hit like a slap. The sting was immediate, but deeper still was the realization that her mother had made this decision without even considering her. Taylor's entire life, her identity, her connection to the family, had just been brushed aside like it was nothing. "Are you seriously telling me you're selling it without even consulting me?" Taylor repeated, her voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and anger. Julia's expression softened, but only slightly. "I'm doing this for your future, Taylor. For Emma. You don't understand now, but you will." Taylor couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her mother, the woman who had always been the center of her world, was now standing in her house, justifying a decision that threatened to take everything away. "Mom, stop! Just stop! You can't do this! You can't just take everything from me!" "From us," Taylor said, her voice barely above a whisper. The words felt heavy, suffocating. She had always tried to be the good daughter, the one who played by the rules. But this was too much. Julia stood up, her posture rigid, her eyes cold. "You'll see. One day, you'll thank me." Taylor sat there, stunned, as her mother walked out of the house, leaving her with more questions than answers. The door closed with a soft click, but the weight of the moment lingered. She sat there for a long while, her hands trembling. What had just happened? What was her mother really up to? Taylor didn't have the answers, but one thing was certain. Her world had just shifted in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. The house, the family, nothing felt safe anymore. The house felt colder after Julia left, as if the air had shifted, carrying with it the weight of betrayal. Taylor stood in the living room, staring at the door long after it had closed behind her mother. She had expected something, maybe a surprise, a decision, even an argument. But not this. Not her mother calmly telling her that the house was gone, that everything they had built together was slipping away without a second thought. Her heart was racing, her thoughts spinning in chaotic circles. The house, the family legacy, the place that had been a symbol of everything that had held her family together, was suddenly nothing more than a pawn in her mother's game. Taylor had always trusted her. She had always believed that Julia, despite her quirks and controlling nature, wanted what was best for her family. But this was something else entirely. She glanced down at Emma, still sitting at the dining table, oblivious to the conversation that had just taken place. The innocence in her daughter's eyes reminded Taylor of everything she was fighting for. Emma deserved better than this. Taylor wouldn't let her grow up in a world where betrayal was the norm. She wouldn't let her daughter suffer the same way she had. But what could she do now? Her mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of the conversation, trying to make sense of the words Julia had thrown at her. Taylor tried to shake off the feeling of helplessness. She had to do something. But what? That night, after putting Emma to bed, Taylor sat alone on the couch, the dim light from the TV flickering in the background. Her thoughts kept drifting back to Julia's words. "You don't understand now, but you will." What did that even mean? Was this some twisted version of tough love, or was there something darker at play? The more Taylor thought about it, the more questions piled up in her mind. And with each question came a gnawing feeling that something more sinister was happening beneath the surface. She grabbed her phone, scrolling through her contacts, until she found Mia's name. Mia was the only person she could trust in this mess. Her friend, her lawyer, the one person who had always been on her side. If anyone could help her navigate this, it was Mia. Taylor pressed send. The next morning, Taylor met Mia at a small coffee shop on the corner. It was the kind of place that felt warm and familiar, a refuge from the chaos of her life. Taylor sipped her coffee, her hands trembling as she recounted the conversation with her mother. Mia listened carefully, her brow furrowed, her gaze never leaving Taylor. "So, your mom is selling the house?" Mia asked, making sure she understood correctly. "And she didn't tell you beforehand?" Taylor nodded, her voice tight with frustration. "She said it was for the family, for Emma's future. But I don't believe her. It doesn't make sense. And then she tried to make me feel like I was the one who didn't understand." Mia paused, taking a slow sip of her coffee before responding. "Something doesn't add up here, Taylor. I don't know what's going on, but this is more than just a bad decision. She's hiding something, and I think you need to find out what it is before it's too late." Taylor's stomach churned at the thought. But Mia was right. Her mother had always been a woman of control. But this felt like something more than just control. This felt like manipulation on a level she hadn't seen before. "I don't know where to start," Taylor admitted. "It's like she's always had this secret, this way of running the family, and now it's like she's just pulling the rug out from under me." Mia leaned in, her voice lowering. "You don't have to go at this alone. Let me help. We can look into the financials, see if there's anything strange going on. If she's been hiding something, we'll find it. Taylor felt a spark of hope. Mia was right. She didn't have to do this alone. She had a plan. She could fight back. But as she left the coffee shop and made her way home, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking straight into a trap. Every step felt heavier, every breath more labored. She wasn't just fighting for the house anymore. She was fighting for her family, for everything she had ever believed in. Later that day, Taylor began to search through the old documents she had found hidden in her father's study. She had never gone through them before, had never needed to, but now she felt the urgency pushing her forward. She had to find out what her mother had been hiding. Hours passed as she sifted through piles of paperwork, most of it boring legal jargon and old bills, until she came across a file labeled Property and Family Assets. Her heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was what she had been looking for. Inside the file, there were documents that confirmed her worst fear. Julia had signed papers to sell the house without consulting Taylor, but it didn't stop there. There were other documents, ones that looked like they were forged, showing that Julia had been funneling money from the family business into a private account. And buried at the bottom of the pile was a will. A new one that had been signed months ago, that shifted control of the family assets entirely into Julia's hands. Taylor's pulse quickened as she absorbed the information. This wasn't just about the house anymore. This was about her mother taking control of everything. She had manipulated everyone, including her father, and now she was coming for Taylor. The woman who had raised her, the woman who had been her rock, was now the enemy. She had to act fast. She couldn't trust her mother anymore. She couldn't let her win. Taylor woke up early the next morning, the stillness of the house feeling heavy in the quiet hours before anyone else was awake. She sat at the kitchen table, clutching a mug of lukewarm coffee, staring at the documents Mia had helped her dig up. The weight of the truth was suffocating, but there was still something about it that felt unfinished. The more she uncovered, the more questions piled up. And now, after everything, she couldn't afford to ignore the biggest one. Why? The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but she could feel its warmth starting to creep through the blinds, the light scattering across the wooden floors of her living room. The shadows from the kitchen counter danced lightly as she turned over every document once more, looking for something she might have missed. And that's when it hit her. Her mother wasn't just after the house. It was the whole family legacy she wanted to claim, piece by piece. Taylor's chest tightened as she leaned back, her mind racing. Her mother had always been manipulative, but this level of deception felt like a betrayal on an entirely different scale. She had trusted Julia with everything, her life, her childhood, her memories. And now it was as if the woman who raised her, the woman who told her she'd always have her back, had decided to take everything for herself. What Taylor had once considered her solid foundation was suddenly sinking, and she was left trying to stay afloat in a sea of lies. Her phone buzzed. It was Mia. "I found something. Meet me in 20 minutes. Taylor's heart skipped a beat. Mia had always been the calm, level-headed one. If she was calling this early, it was serious. Taylor quickly gathered herself, shoving the documents back into the drawer, the weight of the situation now settling heavily on her shoulders. She couldn't lose focus. Not now. They met in a dimly lit cafe on the corner of her street. It was the kind of place that didn't ask questions, where the clinking of coffee cups and the soft hum of low conversation provided the perfect cover for secrets. Mia was already there when Taylor arrived, sitting in a booth near the back with her phone in hand, looking uncharacteristically tense. "What did you find?" Taylor asked, sitting down across from her, her voice betraying the anxiety she had been holding in all morning. Mia didn't immediately answer, instead sliding a piece of paper across the table. "Look at this." It was a copy of a contract, one that Taylor had never seen before. Her eyes scanned it quickly. The transfer of assets, irrevocable changes in control. Her hands shook as she read the small print. "Wait, this is a trust. My mom signed this months ago. Why didn't I know about it? Because, Mia replied, her voice low, you weren't supposed to. Taylor's mind reeled. A trust. A document that would transfer control of everything, assets, properties, businesses, directly to Julia. And it was all done in secrecy, hidden away until it was too late. I knew it, Taylor muttered, her voice shaking. She's been planning this for a while, hasn't she? This wasn't just about the house. Mia nodded, her face grim. This isn't just a financial scheme. This is about power. She's consolidating control over the family business, over everything. You were never meant to have a say in it. Taylor felt a surge of anger, the kind that makes your chest burn. She's not going to get away with this. I won't let her. Taylor, listen to me, Mia said, her tone firm but filled with concern. This is bigger than we thought. If you go after her now, she'll destroy you. You need to be strategic. If you want to win, you can't just play by the rules anymore. Taylor clenched her fists on the table, her mind a whirl of conflicting thoughts. On one hand, she wanted to take action, expose Julia for the manipulative, power-hungry person she was. But the other part of her, the part that had grown up loving her mother, that had always believed in her, couldn't help but feel a pang of doubt. Could she really fight back? Was she strong enough to stand up to her mother's lies? A silence hung between them, thick and suffocating. Taylor finally exhaled, the pressure of her emotions starting to show. Do I even know who she is anymore? Taylor whispered, her voice barely audible. The woman I grew up with, was that just a mask? A lie? Mia looked at her carefully, her gaze softening. Taylor, you've been trying to protect something that's already broken. It's time to stop pretending everything's fine. It's time to fight for what's yours. Later that day, Taylor sat down at her desk, staring at the documents in front of her. She had made a decision. She was going to confront Julia. But not yet. Not until she had the leverage she needed. Taylor had always prided herself on being smart, on thinking things through. But now, in the face of this betrayal, she was willing to take risks. The gloves were coming off. The phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. Taylor hesitated, then answered. Hello? A cool, familiar voice answered. Taylor, this is your mother. Her blood ran cold. She hadn't expected to hear from Julia so soon. I know what you're doing, Julia said, her voice cold and calculating. And I'm telling you right now, you will never take this from me. I've worked too hard to let you ruin it now. The words hit like a punch in the gut, but Taylor stood her ground. Then I guess we're about to find out who really has control, aren't we? Taylor replied, her voice steady, though her hands were trembling. I'm not going down without a fight. Julia's laugh echoed through the phone, but there was no warmth in it. You don't understand, Taylor. It's already over. The line went dead. Taylor sat in the darkened living room, the house eerily quiet. The clock ticked on the wall, marking the passing seconds that felt like hours. She had been pacing the floor for what seemed like forever, trying to gather the courage to make the call. Her mother had left that damning phone call earlier, and now Taylor knew what she had to do. Confront Julia. But the fear inside her, the knot in her stomach, was almost overwhelming. It had always been difficult to stand up to her mother, but this time, everything was different. Her hand hovered over the phone, but she couldn't make herself dial. Her fingers trembled as she stared at the screen. What if this only makes things worse? What if she's too powerful, too far gone? But she couldn't back down. Not now. Not when everything she loved was on the line. Finally, she took a deep breath, pushed the thoughts aside, and dialed. The phone rang twice before her mother's voice cut through the silence. Taylor, Julia said, her tone cool, almost detached. I've been waiting for you to call. Taylor's heart pounded in her chest. She clenched her fists, trying to steady herself. We need to talk. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Julia spoke again, her voice dripping with condescension. Oh, I think we already have. You're just upset because you can't control everything anymore. But that's not my fault, Taylor. You should have been smarter. The words stung. Taylor's throat tightened, You've been lying to me, hiding things from me. This whole time, you've been planning to take everything away from me. Take everything? Julia scoffed. Don't be dramatic. I'm doing what's necessary for everyone's future. Taylor wanted to scream. She wanted to lash out, tell her mother how much she had hurt her, how much this betrayal was suffocating her. But she couldn't afford to be emotional now. She had to stay focused. You're not doing this for anyone's future. You're doing it for yourself, Taylor replied, her voice barely containing her fury. You want control, and you'll stop at nothing to get it. Another pause. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. Finally, Julia's voice returned, colder than before. Do you think I don't know what you're trying to do? You're digging into things you don't understand. You're digging your own grave, Taylor. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Taylor said, the words coming out stronger than she expected. This ends now. Then come and get it, sweetheart, Julia responded, her voice sharp, almost mocking. You think you can take me down? You've been living in my shadow for far too long. It's time to wake up. Taylor slammed the phone down, the sound reverberating through the house. She sat there in the deafening silence, her heart racing. She had been prepared for this, or so she thought. But hearing those words from her mother, hearing the sheer disdain in her voice, was like a slap to the face. Julia had always controlled their relationship, but this was something else entirely. It wasn't just about power. It was about destroying everything Taylor held dear. She could feel the anger bubbling up, threatening to spill over, but she couldn't afford to let her emotions take the lead. This wasn't just about a fight with her mother anymore. This was about protecting everything she had worked for. Her family, her future, Emma's future. And she wasn't going to let Julia win. That night, Taylor lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. The confrontation with Julia had been inevitable, but now that it had happened, she was left with the aftermath. The hollow feeling that came from realizing that the person you trusted most is the one who's been tearing your world apart. She had always been the good daughter, the obedient one who followed the rules, who tried to keep everyone happy. But that Taylor, the one who had always put her mother first, was gone. She had to be. There was no room for that person anymore. By morning, she was ready. Ready to make her move. Ready to fight for what was hers. Mia arrived at Taylor's house later that day, her face serious, her posture tense. They didn't waste any time. Taylor led her into the living room, where the documents were spread out on the coffee table. Mia studied them carefully, her brow furrowed. You were right, Mia said, her voice low. Julia's been hiding a lot more than just the house sale. She's got these trusts, these changes in the family business. It's all there. It's a full takeover. Taylor clenched her jaw. I told you, she's been playing this game for a long time. I just didn't know how deep it went. Mia picked up one of the documents, her eyes scanning it. And now it's your move. Taylor nodded, a wave of determination washing over her. I'm going to expose her. I'll make sure everyone knows what she's really been up to. Later that afternoon, Taylor found herself in the office of the family lawyer, Daniel, a man who had worked with her family for years. She had always trusted him, but now she wasn't so sure. Julia had too many connections, too many people in her corner, but Taylor had one thing her mother didn't: the truth. And truth was a powerful weapon. Taylor, Daniel said, his voice cautious as he looked over the documents. This is more than I expected. I know, Taylor replied, her voice steady. But it's all there. She's been lying, Daniel. She's been manipulating everything. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. I've known Julia for a long time, but this is a different side of her. You've got a tough road ahead of you. I'm ready, Taylor said, her voice firm. I've had enough of being in the shadows. It's time to take control. Taylor paced her kitchen, the weight of her mother's words still echoing in her mind. The confrontation had been raw, but she could feel herself unraveling with every moment that passed. Her mother's betrayal was a knife twisting deeper into her chest, But Taylor wasn't going to let it define her. She had spent too long being manipulated, too long staying silent. The time had come to end it. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. Mia. Taylor didn't hesitate to answer. We need to bring it to her, Taylor. Now. Mia's voice was firm. We have the proof. You can't let her control you anymore. Taylor's pulse quickened. She had already been to the lawyer's office earlier, the weight of the documents on her mind. But now it was time to confront her mother once and for all. I'm ready, she replied, determination filling her voice. Arriving at the family home, Taylor felt a familiar chill as she approached the door. The house was immaculate, still the same as it had always been, but to her, it felt foreign. Julia was sitting at the dining room table when Taylor entered, her sharp eyes instantly assessing her daughter. Taylor didn't hesitate. She dropped the stack of documents in front of her mother. You've been hiding everything from me. All these years, you've manipulated everyone. I'm done. Julia picked up the papers, her hands calm, her face unreadable. I did what was necessary for the family, Taylor. You can't understand that. I understand just fine, Taylor shot back, her voice tight with anger. You've been playing us all. It's about control, not family. Julia's face hardened, but her voice remained steady. You've always been naive, Taylor. You should have known better. I won't let you take everything, Taylor said, her words sharp. I won't let you tear our family apart for your own gain. The silence in the room was thick with tension. Then, as if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Julia's face shifted from anger to confusion as she turned to the door. Who is it? The door opened, and Daniel, the family lawyer, stepped in. His expression was serious, his posture rigid. We need to talk. Julia's brows furrowed. What is this about? Daniel didn't waste time. Julia, the trust you set up, the secret assets. It's time to face the music. We've got proof. Julia paled. You can't do this. But Daniel, calm and steady, slid a file across the table. I'm afraid it's already done. Taylor felt a rush of victory and relief. Her mother's world was crumbling. Taylor walked into the courtroom with her head held high, the cool air of the building brushing against her skin as she approached the door. Today was the day. Everything she had been fighting for was about to come to a head. The nerves that had plagued her for weeks had settled into a calm, determined resolve. There was no turning back now. She glanced at her phone, checking for any last-minute messages from Mia. Nothing. She was here, as promised. Taylor had spent hours poring over the documents, rehearsing her arguments, preparing herself for this moment. She was ready. When she entered the courtroom, her eyes immediately landed on her mother, seated across the room at the defense table. Julia, as always, wore an immaculate, confident look. But today, there was something different about her. Taylor could see the slight tremor in her hands as she shuffled through her papers, the subtle crack in her composed demeanor that had never been there before. It was as if Julia knew that today the stakes were too high. Today, she wasn't in control. Taylor sat down next to Mia, who gave her an encouraging smile. It was a small gesture, but it made all the difference. Taylor's mind raced as she sat there, looking over the documents in front of her. These papers weren't just about money. They were about power, about who controlled the future of the family. The trial began, and the opposing lawyer spoke first, outlining Julia's side of the story. They painted a picture of a woman who had worked tirelessly to secure the family's future. A woman who had only acted in the best interest of everyone. Taylor's teeth clenched. Every word was a lie. A carefully crafted narrative that hid the truth of Julia's greed. When it was Taylor's turn to speak, her heart thudded loudly in her chest. She stood up, her legs slightly unsteady, but she focused on the end goal. I won't let her win. Your Honor, she began, her voice clear but shaking with emotion. My mother has manipulated every single one of us. She used the family trust, not to protect us, but to control us, to take everything that was never hers to take. There was a murmur in the courtroom, the weight of her words settling over everyone present. Taylor paused, gathering her thoughts, before continuing. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to believe that the woman who raised me, who I trusted, could do this. But the truth is, she's not the person I thought she was. She's never been. The room was silent. Taylor's eyes locked onto her mother's, and for the first time, Julia didn't meet her gaze. There was a crack in her armor, just a tiny one, but it was enough for Taylor to see it. Julia was afraid. The trial dragged on, but it was clear that the momentum had shifted. Julia's defense crumbled under the weight of the evidence. The documents Taylor had painstakingly gathered, with Mia's help, were irrefutable. The truth was out. Julia's manipulation was no longer a secret. As the day wore on, Taylor's sense of resolve grew stronger. Every word spoken in her defense made the path ahead clearer. She wasn't just fighting for money or assets. She was fighting for the truth, for her own peace, for her daughter's future. The climax of the trial arrived as Taylor stood before the judge, preparing for her final statement. Her mother was already on edge, her composure slipping further with each passing moment. Taylor knew the end was near. I'm not just here to win, Taylor said, her voice steady but full of emotion. I'm here to stop a cycle of manipulation and control that's gone on for far too long. This family deserves better. We deserve to move forward, not be held back by a lie. As Taylor finished speaking, the room fell into silence. Julia's lawyer tried one last attempt to discredit her, but it was too late. The evidence had been laid bare, and the judge was ready to make his decision. Moments later, the judge's gavel struck, echoing in the quiet room. The court finds in favor of Taylor. The assets will be transferred to her control, and all actions made by Julia regarding the trust are deemed invalid. Taylor couldn't breathe for a moment. It was over. The battle was finally won. Her eyes met her mother's, and for a fleeting second, Taylor saw something she hadn't expected: regret. But it was quickly replaced with anger, with resentment. Julia's expression hardened as she stood, refusing to look at her daughter. Outside the courtroom, Taylor stepped into the bright light of the hallway, feeling as though she had just stepped out of a long, dark tunnel. The weight of the victory was slowly sinking in. Her hands were still shaking, but the adrenaline kept her moving forward. You did it, Mia said, placing a hand on her shoulder. Taylor turned to her friend, the reality of the situation crashing over her. She had won, yes, but there was no triumph in seeing her mother's world collapse, only exhaustion. I did it, Taylor whispered, her voice shaky, but I don't know if I feel like a winner. The dust had settled. Taylor sat in the quiet of her living room, the hum of the outside world barely reaching her through the thick glass windows. Her fingers gently traced the edges of the family photos on the mantel. Her wedding, Emma's first birthday, moments she had once held dear, now weighed down with the years of pain and loss. The court had ruled in her favor. Julia's influence was broken, and the family assets were now in her hands. But none of it felt like a victory. She had won the battle, but the war had changed her irreparably. The woman she had been, the daughter who had clung to the ideal of family, was gone. There was no relief in the win, only silence, and the quiet ache of a future she wasn't sure how to embrace. Emma entered the room, her small steps soft on the hardwood floor. Mom, are you okay? Her voice, full of concern, sliced through the stillness. Taylor looked up at her daughter, her heart swelling with a mixture of love and regret. Emma, the one thing she had fought for all along, was standing in front of her, the future she had always wanted to protect. I'm okay, sweetheart, Taylor said, her voice a little hoarse. I just need some time to think. Emma climbed into her lap, resting her head on her mother's chest, the simple weight of her child reminding Taylor that there was something worth holding on to, something worth fighting for. It wasn't the legacy, it wasn't the property. It was Emma. It was her. The battle with Julia had left scars that would never fade. But in that moment, Taylor realized that this was where her real fight began. Not with her mother, not for control or inheritance, but for herself, for Emma, for a future where love and trust could finally begin to heal the wounds. As she held her daughter, Taylor knew that while the court had handed her the reins to the family legacy, the true legacy she wanted to leave behind was one of strength, compassion, and the courage to walk away from the lies. It was time to build something new, from the ground up, starting with forgiveness. Not just for Julia, but for herself. She looked out the window, seeing the world with a new clarity. It was time to step forward, into the unknown, and reclaim the peace she had longed for. This was her story now. As I sit here reflecting on everything that's happened, I realize this journey has been about more than just fighting for what's rightfully mine. It's been about understanding my worth, letting go of the past, and finding strength in the face of betrayal. Life doesn't always give us a fair shot, but what matters is how we rise from the challenges we face. I learned that sometimes, the hardest battles are the ones that force us to look within and become the person we were always meant to be. I want you to ask yourself, have you ever felt like the world was against you? Like someone was pulling strings behind your back, and you were just a puppet in their game? If so, know that you have the power to break free. Don't let anyone, not even family, define your worth. We all have the strength to rewrite our own story. If you found this story inspiring, or if it made you think, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment and let me know what resonated with you, or where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on more stories like this. Let's keep the conversation going. Together, we can all find the courage to stand up for what's right. Thanks for being a part of this journey. See you in the next video.